and welcome to the SNN.Network Summer Virtual Event. Our next presenting company is Alpha Cognition. It is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to Michael McFadden, CEO of Alpha Cognition. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, operator. I'm excited to tell and update everyone on Alpha Cognition's story, our pipeline, and our latest clinical developments. I will be discussing some forward-looking statements, so please consult this slide if you have questions about the implications of those. Alpha Cognition is a late-stage biopharma company. We're focused on neurodegenerative diseases. Our lead compound is Alpha 1062 NCE for the treatment of mild to moderate Alzheimer's dementia. We believe we formulated this compound to be a best-in-class treatment. We've designed it to optimize some of the limiting effects of current agents in the market. One of those is efficacious dose, getting to that dose quickly. Second is limiting treatment-limiting side effects. And third, and most importantly, improving long-term outcomes for these patients. The market that we're entering with mild to moderate Alzheimer's is a large market. 11 million prescriptions are written each year in the market. It's characterized by very high patient turnover. About 30% of patients turn over by month 4 of therapy, primarily due to side effects. We're initiating our pivotal study with approval targeted for the first half of 2023. Now, we've taken a de-risk 505(b)(2) application pathway for the drug, and we're supplementing that with patient differentiation data that we'll be able to use in our commercialization efforts. Our patents extend past 2040, so there's a long patent life for us to commercialize the program. Our pipeline I'll talk about momentarily. Needless to say, we have multiple shots on goal with multiple products and indications that we're pursuing, and we bring to the table an experienced leadership team, over 250 drug approvals to our credit, and over 20 product launches. About half of those have been billion-dollar launches. A bit on our pipeline. As I mentioned, we're led by Alpha 1062. Most of the presentation will focus on that compound, but we also have follow-on life cycle program with Alpha 1062 plus memantine. It's a combination product that will pursue a 505(b)(2) path for moderate to severe Alzheimer's. If approved, if both products are approved, we would have ability to participate from diagnosis all the way to end of life, and that is about a 17 million prescription market. We have 2 early-stage programs, one for mild traumatic brain injury. Intranasal formulation, Alpha 1062, provides increased bioavailability straight into the brain, and we are initiating a preclinical study this year with top-line data readout early Q1 of next year. We have a additional program, Alpha 602. This is a preclinical program that will be underway shortly, with the top-line data readout in 2022 first quarter, and we're pursuing that program for ALS. We have orphan drug designation for that program. Very excited about the progranulin gene therapy activities that we have ongoing. Now, a bit about Alzheimer's market. A large market, 6 million persons in the U.S. alone are diagnosed with disease. It's characterized by impact on learning, memory, daily functioning. Most of these patients end up in institutional care over time. A tremendous amount of money spent, and about 8 out of 10 patients that are diagnosed with mild to moderate Alzheimer's are started on a acetylcholinesterase inhibitor. Interestingly, only about half of those patients remain on drug by year-end, primarily due to side effects that occur with the other agents in the class. Now, a little bit about Alpha 1062. It's a prodrug of galantamine. It's been formulated with a benzyl ester, which eliminates acetylcholinesterase inhibition. We've added a gluconate salt and coated that with an enteric-coated tablet. The benefits of that are when the drug is taken, it's a pill. When you swallow that drug, it enters the gut. In the small intestine, it's absorbed inactively. So inactive compound with minimal or no side effects seen to date at starting in therapeutic doses. It then is metabolized in the liver where the benzyl ester is cleaved. That releases galantamine, the active moiety of the drug, into the brain. That active metabolite is free to circulate with greater bioavailability. We've increased bioavailability with the drug about 15%. So in essence, the drug works where it's supposed to, and it has no effect where it should not. And here, this is illustrating that effect. On the left side of this graph, this is a blown up look at the lining of the small intestine. The current drugs on the left, when they're taken, they are absorbed into the gut. They overstimulate local neurons in the wall of the intestine. The impact of that is increased nausea, increased diarrhea, increased vomiting for patients, and indeed that's probably why many of these patients drop off of drug. When alpha 1062 on the right side of the graph is absorbed into the gut, it is inert. So it has no activity, no stimulation of those receptors in the gut, which to date has demonstrated no nausea, no vomiting, no diarrhea. We think that's a really important development and a differentiator for our drug versus the other drugs in the market. And then the question is, how does it work in the brain where it's supposed to? Are there differences there? And there are. It is, as I mentioned earlier, galantamine is an active metabolite, and it has two effects in the brain. One, on the left side of the graph, you can see acetylcholine in the synapse of the brain is increased when acetylcholinesterase inhibitors are used. And again, with alpha 1062, this happens. But additionally, on the right side of the graph, it binds allosterically to the alpha 7 nicotinic receptor. And that is really key for efficacy for this drug, we believe, and that alpha 7 nicotinic receptor activity has been shown to stimulate the cholinergic pathway, modulate inflammation, buffer some of the effects of amyloid, and has downstream effects on other receptors that are beneficial for patients with Alzheimer's dementia. We believe this may account for some of the differential data that has been published on galantamine. Now, for approval, we have a 505(b)(2) study pathway that we are pursuing. We are initiating our pivotal trial this fall. The parameters needed to be successful in that trial are AUC, that's primary, and then Cmax, Tmax will also be looked at and evaluated. The goal of this trial is to be within an 80 to 125 ratio of the comparator drug, in this case, Razidine. So we've demonstrated this already, two different formulations. On the right side, you see the results of that data, sublingual and enteric-coated tablet. We've already demonstrated that ratio with alpha 1062. We'll need to do this again in our pivotal trial with a larger patient cohort. On the left side, I mentioned bioavailability is increased with this drug, and this is a graph looking at alpha 1062 in the blue versus Razidine in the brown, and you can see alpha 1062 has increased bioavailability, meaning less drug needed for same action in the brain. Now here's a look at the pivotal study. It's a bioequivalent study. There'll be a food effect and a fasted arm in this study. The patients are screened, dosed, and then there's analysis for AUC for the drug versus the comparator, and we have to hit those parameters for bioequivalence. If we do that, it is approved. We are also initiating a patient study in 2022 that will seek to demonstrate differences in adverse events, insomnia, and dosing. And we hope to replicate the results that you see on this slide, which are alpha 1062 showing no GI side effects. So this is a look at alpha 1062 11 milligram single dose study on the left. As I mentioned, to date, we have seen 0 side effects at starting and therapeutic doses across multiple formulations with our drug. Now, I have, for illustrative purposes, not comparator study, how that fares with Razidine, which is galantamine, in a single dose study and then in doses across the Razidine cohort. Single dose, 28% side effects, and pool data, almost 50% side effects with that drug. So you can see stark differences between the two compounds. If we're able to show placebo-like side effects, this is game-changing for the physicians who treat these patients. And then we'll seek to demonstrate and commercialize long-term effects of galantamine. I'll show 2 studies that illustrate these results. Number 1, there was a study showing galantamine versus placebo and the effects of allowing patients to remain independently living. And what that data showed is a reduction of 31% each year patient is on drug for reduced nursing home admission. Over 3 years, you can see the stark differences between galantamine-treated group and placebo group, almost 50-point difference, meaning that patients are able to live independently with drug versus no drug. And then most recently, in April this year, a study came out in Sweden looking at almost 40,000 patients with Alzheimer's dementia. The results are striking and beneficial for galantamine. It was shown to have a lower risk of death compared to untreated patients. It was superior to the comparator drugs, donepezil and rivastigmine. And it also had the strongest effect on cognitive decline. It was the only drug demonstrating stat-sig reduction in developing severe dementia, despite having the lowest number of patients in the study. We'll seek to demonstrate these types of data with Alpha 1062 post-approval with a very efficient registry, which will allow us publication data over time. So in summary, the differentiation points we'll seek to demonstrate at approval are faster onset with no or limited titration, reduced GI side effects versus other drugs in the class versus placebo, and dual mechanism of action. How does the drug work in a brain? This is really important for doctors because it implies a greater efficacy. And then long term, we'll seek to demonstrate risk reduction to severe dementia and independent living. Now, how does the class fare? Why is it interesting? Why is it exciting? This is a class that has multiple blockbusters that have been launched for treatment of Alzheimer's dementia. You see the overlay of all of these launch curves for each of the drugs that have been provided. The key takeaway here is there have been drug after drug that have achieved blockbuster status, and it's primarily because patients are treated with these drugs, and then they will seek second-line, third-line, and even fourth-line therapy to try to get amelioration of disease or a drug that they can tolerate. That bodes well for a new drug in class that's well tolerated. And how will we enter the market? How can a small company like Alpha Cognition be successful in commercialization? Several reasons. One, we've done it before multiple times with small sales forces that have been highly effective. Two, this is a highly concentrated class. The market is two-thirds neuro and LTC. We have experience running one of the largest LTC forces in the industry and decades of experience in the neurology space. This is a force that can be launched with about 100 salespersons, and they can achieve two-thirds of the market potential with a small, efficient sales force. And then how does the market look? It's a large 11 million prescription markets, primarily donepezil and rivastigmine, but those agents have very high turnover, 30% discontinuation by month 4. Half of those patients discontinue treatment by year 1. We believe that offers a great opportunity to be next in line or even surpass those drugs for treatment that is well tolerated. And then we'll highlight key points of label differentiation, exploit the differences in our drug versus those others with the checkmark slide that we just went over. And we will also optimize digital marketing to both caregivers and physicians. We can do that very efficiently in today's market. This is a drug class also that has very low payer restrictions. It's a low managed class. So payers are saying if you bring a drug that is reasonably priced with differentiation points, it's a drug that we will cover. We validated that with multiple market research arms that have explored that with the payers. So in summary, it's a very exciting class, $5 billion market potential, high discontinuation rates. We've exploited those discontinuation rates and differentiation points with our drug. Reduced side effect profile, low titration are two primaries. And then long-term data, being able to show our drug can help patients live independently is very meaningful to caregivers and physicians. Now, the program itself, in summary, is a single bioequivalent study. That's what's required for NDA approval. We're supporting that with patient study to differentiate side effects. And we have multiple near-term milestones. I'll get to those momentarily because we have many. A quick point about our pipeline. One is alpha 1062 plus memantine will expand our usage into severe Alzheimer's dementia. That's a 7 million script market, and it allows us to compete from diagnosis all the way to end of life with that combination. So we're very excited about that as a follow-on program. And then, as I mentioned earlier, mild traumatic brain injury, there's good pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic reasons why this drug will work. We're demonstrating that in a preclinical study this year, and then that would follow with a phase 2 study, depending on the results of our work and FDA feedback. We have already completed 1A, 1B with the nasal formulation. Alpha 602, progranulin molecule, very exciting area of discovery and research right now. Our progranulin asset is in preclinical study. We'll have top-line data readout in Q1 of next year. We're excited about what that program can do for ALS patients who suffer right now with no good approved therapy and no curative therapy. We have orphan drug designation for that program. So key investor considerations, de-risk program, supplemented with patient data that's highly differentiating. For physicians and caregivers, we're using our capital very efficiently with a 505(b)(2) path, and we have a long, strong patent portfolio extending past 2041. Our team, 250 drug approvals, 20 commercial launches. We've got the experience and the expertise to bring the program to market and then commercialize it. And then very excited about the catalysts that are forthcoming in the company. Top-line data readouts on all of our programs in Q1 of next year, NDA filing in Q3 of next year, and enrollment of our patient differentiating study next year as well. So there's a lot of opportunity and data readouts for the company in 2022. 2023 will be followed with product approval, product launch, and additional data points from the work that we're doing. I'll turn it over to you for questions. I see a couple on the question Q&A bar, so I'll just read these questions and answer them. One, what are some of the value catalysts moving forward? As I mentioned on the data readouts, those are key value catalysts, so I'll go back to that slide. The top-line data readouts of 1062 and AD will provide additional de-risking for that program and the ability of the company to file NDA in 2022 for approval. Number two, our 602 program, our progranulin program, we should have data readout on that program, which will provide guidance on a go-forward path for our progranulin asset. And then our mild TBI program, that data readout could provide an accelerated pathway toward development for the program because we've already completed 1A, 1B. So we're really excited to see what Alpha 1062 can deliver for MTBI and the results of our work there. Additionally, we have NDA submission for the program, and there'll be additional activities that we're not able to align with a specific date that will be forthcoming for the company. So it's really probably the most exciting year in the company's history. Are there additional? Yes, the additional question here. So it is, what has to be approved or shown for approval for product? So I'm going to go back and to slide 9 and review that one more time. So AUC is the primary endpoint that we have to demonstrate, and we have to show it within a 20% difference for the comparator drug, which is Razidine. If we do that, this will and can be approved drug with the agency. Now, we're supplementing this, I mentioned, with a patient study, and in that patient study, we're going to try to show this. Very low GI side effects. We're going to also try to show ability of drug to get to therapeutic dose. So we'll be trying to demonstrate these items in that patient study. Our market research says if we do that, that physicians are likely to use this drug for patients because they need a drug that patients can tolerate, and they want a drug that patients can get to a therapeutic dose quickly so that they don't have to titrate over several months of time. So very important, two primary drivers for physicians when they select drugs for this patient population. The third that we'll demonstrate and be able to promote from is dual mechanism of action. This is the only drug that affects alpha-7 nicotinic receptor activity other than razidine, but razidine is an intolerable drug, so doctors don't use that. If we can demonstrate that activity, it implies better efficacy potentially for the patients and certainly a multimodal activity of the drug, which is very interesting to physicians. And then, as I mentioned, long-term, we'll try to demonstrate some additional activity with our registry program. Another question coming in is on the script market. So the question in summary is, how big is the market, and why is that turnover so high with these drugs, and if they're still the leader in the market? So when I look at the market, 11 million script market, you've got donepezil, that's Aricept, rivastigmine, Exelon in the brown on the right side of this graph. Donepezil, rivastigmine, irrespective of which drug you take, still have 30% turnover by month 4. It's primarily due to side effects. Those side effects are diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, or they can't get the drug, the doctor can't get the drug to a therapeutic dose and the patient's not seeing effect on a starting dose, so they just stop and move to next drug. Now, why are they the leader? There's really no other choice. They're the only drugs in the market, and galantamine is intolerable, so doctors don't use that commonly because they don't want callbacks from patients saying they can't tolerate drug or they don't want patients throwing up. The impact of this in this particular disease is patients are typically cared for by a caregiver. So imagine you're a caregiver with a patient suffering from Alzheimer's. You're taking care of them. The doctor starts them on drug. You're excited for an opportunity for improvement. And then the patient has diarrhea. You're changing them. Or they throw up. You're cleaning that up as a caregiver. Day 1, day 2, you're probably trying to help and do that. But if it continues day 4, 5, 6, you're calling the doctor back as a caregiver saying, what else do you have, doc? The patient, my loved one is not tolerating this medicine. And that's what we see happen and why that turnover is important. If we demonstrate no side effects or placebo-like side effects with our medication, it is highly differentiating for physicians. Additionally, the dual mechanism of action is very, very important for physicians. Here's another question. Cash position for the company, we have $7 million in cash. We're burning about $2 million per quarter. So we're using our cash very, very efficiently with the company. Another question. Give me one moment. Okay, question on progranulin. So I'm going to go to the Progranulin Pipeline slide. The question is, what is the study that's being done? What will the output of that study be? Okay, so what will the output of the study? So we have an in vitro and vivo study that we are running right now. It's a preclinical study, rodent study with Alpha 602. We're looking at survivability of the rodents. They use a series of tests with the animals to make sure that they are surviving disease when drug is administered. It is a good first step for 602 to determine whether it has efficacy impact, and from this, an additional study will be done, a dose-ranging study, and then one last preclinical study before we move to humans. So that program can advance very rapidly as these are short studies. This study that's ongoing will be finished in Q4 of this year with top-line data readout in Q1 of next year. And then additional 2 studies could be completed within a year and a half to move to humans after that. We have orphan drug designation for that drug that gives us 7 years patent life, and there is no approved therapy for ALS. The thesis on why 602 would be used in ALS is there is data to support increasing levels of progranulin in ALS may restore normal functioning in that life-ending neurodegenerative diseases. So we'll seek to prove that with our studies, and we'll have data readouts early next year. One last question here. Okay, the question is, why did you not run a full efficacy trial with 1062? Why are you taking a 505(b)(2) path for the program? Great question. So we could take a 505(b)(1) path for the program and run an efficacy trial. That efficacy trial would require us 3 years, probably $75 million. Could result in multiple trials, actually, to demonstrate effect. The 505(b)(2) path, because galantamine has already demonstrated effect, and we're showing comparability to galantamine, is a much more efficient way to bring drug to market. Now, we're supplementing that with patient data, and the patient data will allow us to demonstrate the things that physicians care about, which are GI side effects, can a patient stay on drug? Number 2, how does it work in the brain, dual mechanism of action? And 3, how do I dose the drug? Can I get people to a therapeutic dose that is effective for them without treatment-limiting side effects? That means faster onset, by the way, for physicians and patients. So those we're demonstrating with an efficient patient study. It will be a fraction of what a full efficacy study would be, and it provides a lower risk for the company and shareholders for us to demonstrate essentially things that will provide the same value for commercialization. I think that's it for the questions. Thank you for your time today, and appreciate the attendance.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude the Alpha Cognition presentation. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect.